We've seen how to connect our devices when putting together a network. We could either do that with wires or we could do it wirelessly. And we've also looked at the topology of network and how we could physically lay out the different devices and connect them, so that the most common topology being the star topology. The next thing to look at is a couple of models for how the different devices relate to each other. And there's two main models that you're going to learn about in this video. One is the client-server model, and the other is the peer-to-peer model. And so both of these models sort of describe how do the different devices on the network relate to each other. What are the roles that those different devices on the network, what roles do those different devices fulfill? And so you've probably already heard about some of these in passing, the client-server model and then also the peer-to-peer model. And the peer-to-peer model became famous with originally a website called Napster. So file sharing websites are peer-to-peer types of networks where the machines that are on those file sharing websites can interrelate with each other, in a multiple variety of roles. So to explain that more fully, let's start with the client-server model. And the client-server model, the best way to understand the client-server model is just to think about a restaurant. Because in a restaurant, you've got both servers and you have clients. And so if you go into a restaurant to eat, you sit down at the table, you look at the menu, and then the server comes up and asks you what you want. And you say, I'll have fries, a hamburger, a large chocolate shake, and white vinegar to put on my fries. And then the server goes away and gets your order and then comes back and gives it to you, the client. And so that relationship, that model of the client-server model in a restaurant is really pretty much exactly what's happening with the client-server model on a network, where you have various clients. And so here you see in the image, you have a couple of clients, and then you have servers that will fulfill the requests. And so in this model here, if we were going over the internet, these clients might say, give me this web page, and then that web page would be stored on this server, and then that server would provide them with that web page. So just like clients in a restaurant make requests of a server, and then as the server fulfills those requests, it happens the same way on a network. So that's the client-server model. And we're talking about two main types of models, the types of roles that devices on a network might occupy. And so in the client-server model, some devices will be clients, they'll be asking for things, and some devices will be servers, they will be fulfilling requests. In the peer-to-peer model, the devices can either be a client or a server. So if you've ever experienced file sharing, sometimes you're a client and you're asking for things, you're making requests, you're saying, hey, give me all of those songs, give me every song that Led Zeppelin ever recorded, I'm requesting that. And some other machines are serving as servers, and they're fulfilling those requests by providing you with those songs. And then at other times in file sharing networks, right, peer-to-peer networks, you might be the server. So somebody later might be, like, hey, give me Black Dog by Led Zeppelin. And since your computer's on and you have that on your computer might then start serving as a server and fulfill that request for some other machine that's asking for it, who's now acting as the client. So in peer-to-peer networks, the role that devices on the network occupy can be, either client or server. So those are the two models that, describe, what is going to be the role of different devices on the network. And there can be the client server model, or there could be the peer-to-peer model. Now, often when you delve into this topic, you will hear it referred to as like client-server architecture or peer-to-peer architecture. Here's client-server architecture again. And this is in the Encyclopedia Britannica, and here's in Webopedia, it's referring to it like that. And even in the textbook that's commonly used for this class, or all the textbooks that are used for this class, they'll refer to this as client-server architecture or peer-to-peer architecture. But in truth, if you look at what network architecture is, and you delve into network architecture is actually a lot more involved than just specifying which type of model you're using, if it's the client-server model or the peer-to-peer model. So network architecture actually entails all these different layers in something called the OSI network model, which is the Open Systems Interconnection model. And this is just FYI, you don't have to know all this, but all these different layers really sort of lay out in detail how we can get devices to connect with each other. And so each layer has a purpose, kind of like when we looked at the layers of hardware, operating system, application software, user, when we were looking at layers for software and how software relates to hardware. We saw those layers. The network architecture and the OSI network model and all these different layers really kind of talks about how these different parts, when you put together a network, work together. And that's beyond the scope of this class. But I just want to make sure that you understand when people refer to network architecture and they say like client-server architecture or peer-to-peer architecture, really network architecture is this whole other beast, which is much more broad and has much more depth than just saying client-server architecture or peer-to-peer architecture. In fact, even on this page, if I was to search for client, right, nothing comes up on this Wikipedia page under network architecture for client-server. So it's just kind of, there's always ambiguities, and this is a little disambiguation. So when you put together a network, right, here is a network and it would have the star topology. Even though it's kind of laid out like this, we could have put this in a circle with this network hub or switch in the center of the circle. And then this right here is a server. So this would be the client server network model, right? And often colloquially people will say network architecture, the client server network architecture. And this would be the client server. We've got clients and we have servers, and it would be, the topology would be star. So here we have the star topology, right? Like here's the central point to which all these individual clients are connected, the star topology, and we have the client server architecture, client server architecture. So that's these two different models, client server model and peer-to-peer model. And the main thing to take away is that when we have connected our devices, either with wires or wirelessly, and then we've decided, okay, we're going to arrange them where one central point is connecting all the individual devices, which would be the star topology. Next, we need to think about what roles does each device play on the network. And we could choose a model where we have a client-server type of arrangement, where we have a whole bunch of clients and they're all connected to one server, which will fulfill their requests, which is really the most common model for networks in schools and businesses and offices. And the internet and all that. And then we also have this other model called the peer-to-peer model, which is great for like file sharing and distributed networks. So these two models, that's what you're learning here, the different roles that devices on network can fulfill. They could be a client, they could be a server, in which case we'd have the client-server model, or they could be peer-to-peer, where they'll sometimes be the client and sometimes be the server. Hope that makes sense.